I'm Susan Sutton and I'm trying to raise more awareness of befriending, what it is, how it can benefit those who live with poor mental health or a mental illness, a disability, if someone feels lonely, isolated, or even if they are a child whose home life may not be the best. They're struggling at school, perhaps being bullied. Perhaps it's for a refugee who is newly arrived in Scotland, or someone struggling for any number of reasons. There is a befriender or mentor for everyone. And this is podcast number 2 about befriending. This is podcast number 2 in my befriending for migrated unit. And today I've invited Lynne Lamb to come and chat with me. She's kind of like my boss at GAMH. Hi, Lynne.
Hi, Susan. Thanks for inviting me over. I'm really happy to have a wee chat with you about befriending today.
So, Lynne, tell me, how long have you been working with and what do you do at GAMH?
Okay, so let me think. I've been with GAMH now for 9 years. When I first started, I was in a different project. It was called Participation. And the idea behind there was encouraging people to take part in a wide variety of exciting and dynamic activities to help maintain and improve positive mental health and well-being. I was in that post for maybe about a year, and then I moved into my current post, which is as a volunteer coordinator with the befriending service. This project's a little bit different because we realised that some people, they're not maybe quite ready to take part in big group activities. So the idea behind the project is we would introduce somebody to a volunteer befriender. Then we'd meet up each week and it would maybe take that wee bit of pressure off from being in a group situation. There's a lot more to it than that, but I'm sure you'll ask me more as we go on.
So, can I ask, why do people get in touch with GAMH with a view to having a befriender?
So the people that are maybe wanting to access the service, we find that in terms of their mental health, they're maybe now in a better place than they were. But while they've been dealing with any issues to do with their mental health, generally people have become isolated. And that's a key part of the befriending service. We want to break people's social isolation, but we want to do it in a very gentle, kind of fun way. So the idea is we would get to know the person, find out about them, not about their background, their history of mental health, their illnesses, their difficulties. That can be exhausting for people, talking about that all the time. We're interested in you as a person, not a label, not a diagnosis. So we get to know the person, maybe they like history, maybe they like plants or animals. And we try and introduce them to a volunteer that we think might have something in common, a shared interest. And the idea basically is we match them up. People meet for a few weeks. They meet each week and they go out and have these adventures. But the purpose of it is to, as I say, break social isolation, but maybe help to improve the person's confidence, their motivation, their self-esteem. I think it's the social isolation. That's a big key factor for people wanting to access the service.
Yes, I was going to ask you, how do you match befrienders and befriendees?
I mean, with the best will in the world, we really try and look for a commonality there. There's no point in just saying, oh, Bob's free on a Tuesday and Billy's free on a Tuesday. Let's whack them together and see what happens. So we do try to take that into consideration. Sometimes it's about personality as well. If people have a similar sense of humour, sometimes the matching process, maybe the person who's accessing the service is quite quiet and quite shy. So you might think to yourself, well, do we want somebody, a volunteer, who's maybe got a more gentle approach, that way that the person might feel comfortable. But sometimes getting somebody who's a bit more confident, a bit more outgoing can really kind of work well. Sometimes we spend a lot of time thinking about the matching process, but see, to be honest, see when you put two people together and give them a chance to get to know each other, after a few weeks, you'll find that they've got things in common that you'd never known before. You know, people don't always put the name of their favourite film on their application form. And sometimes just as they're getting to know each other, they find that, yeah, that's their favourite film, or, you know, they've both been to this same place on holiday. So there is something in the matching process, and it is strange. Can't lie about that. When you introduce these two strangers at the beginning, it is strange. It's different. It's a bit awkward. But see, around the 6-week mark, when people have been meeting, that's when the magic happens. Honestly, if we could put that in a little bottle and sell it, well, we'd absolutely be winners. Because at that point, I would say after 6 weeks, people are starting to build their own relationship, and it feels more natural. They're getting to know each other. And the person's like, oh, that volunteer's turned up again. Oh, they must like me. There must be some reason that they're coming back. And see, even that wee feeling of confidence in their self or self-esteem, it's really wonderful to be part of that journey and see the person, you know, achieve things through the service that they didn't think was possible before.
Yeah, I must admit, with my current befriendee, I've already started to see a change in her. At our last meeting, she turned up and she was wearing all these bright colours, and she'd had her hair done, and she walked with more confidence as well. And I know she has been struggling, but it really, as I saw her walking towards me, it just really struck me. She just stood out from the crowd. And I thought, wow, you know, I wasn't sure if she was ready to actually go through the process. And it was just, you know, to see her last week, it was so very different. And I think this is round about our 5 or 6 week mark as well. So what you're saying there is absolutely right, I think. You just seem to, the befriender and the befriendee just seem to click, as you say. The befriendee will be saying, wow, the befriender's turned up again. As you say, they must like me. You know, because we're not doing this, from my perspective as a befriender, we're not doing this because we have to do it. We're not getting paid to do it. So to a lot of people, they might think, well, if you're a volunteer, you could just walk away at any time. But it's very much about commitment. And for the befriender to turn up every week is showing that commitment. And that's what other people need to see. I can't even say it's a job. To me, it's an absolute pleasure because you're helping somebody else. And we all need that. We all need a hand from time to time.
Yeah, no, I think everything you said there was spot on, and I think that's I think the power of the volunteer befriending relationship. People aren't stupid. People aren't daft. They understand that this is a volunteer giving up their time, and that's, I think, what makes it more powerful. Because, you know, you could always argue the point that, oh, staff, be that within GAMH support workers or, you know, CPNs, psychologists, psychiatrists, you know, whatever the support is there, you could always argue that they must see me, they must speak to me because that's their job and they're paid to. So I think that's where the real power from the volunteering side comes in. Also, the fact that you're not getting in about difficulties, problems, you know, tell me what happened in 1984, tell me all your difficulties. You're with that person because they are a person. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that's really refreshing. Not going to lie, sometimes I get jealous of the volunteers that are all out there. I know using my hands and eyes and ears out there, but you get to build this wonderful relationship with somebody. Now, it's only for a short time. You know, we've got the whole thing about boundaries. Volunteers have a task and a role. They're there for a set reason and a set purpose. But getting the reviews and the feedback from the volunteer and the befriendee about these changes. I mean, somebody logged off last week, one of the volunteers, and usually she's been the one that's having to suggest the activities. But last week was the first time that the person went, do you know what? I've been thinking, and this is what I would like to do next week. And just that little change in the person's confidence, from, oh, I don't know what I'd like to do, nobody's asked me before, to the person now saying, yeah, I've been thinking, and this is what I'd like to do next week. It's wonderful. It really is. And I couldn't do my job if it wasn't for people like you and all these other wonderful volunteers, that commit. And people come on board to volunteer for so many reasons, and there's no right or wrong in that. Sometimes it's maybe looking at a career change. Some people maybe want to get into college, they're looking for experience. Other people may have had their own lived experience or with their friends or family, and they want to give something back. And other people just have some time and want to make the best use of it. It's wonderful. And obviously we've had COVID, we've had lockdowns, everything like that. Through all the time, GAMH still operated, but we couldn't have our volunteers out meeting people when it wasn't safe. But see the number of people that still contacted us during, even the first lockdown, when the world was burning, we didn't know what was happening. But the number of people that got in touch to say, can I help? Can I help somebody else? Sorry, that made me a wee bit emotional there, but it's just wonderful when people come together and the difference that they can make. And I'd also hope, though, that you get something, for yourself, something positive for you from supporting, other people.
Oh, I definitely do. Because from the first day that I would meet my potential befriendee, because obviously the first time we meet isn't guaranteed to be the first day of the next 6 months meeting up, to see the change in the befriendee over the 6 months, and like you said, and like I've just mentioned as well, after only a couple of months, when you do start seeing changes, you see changes in their appearance, in the way they speak, like you said yourself, when the befriendee is actually saying, I would like to do this. Because I find in the beginning it is hard, because they don't know what to expect. They don't know what they can and can't do. So I actually say to them, tell me something that you've always wanted to do all your life, no matter how crazy or irrational it seems. If it's possible, we'll do it. If you want to go skydiving, though, you're on your own. But yeah, to actually see the change in them. And at the end of the 6 months, when the befriendee, I'm getting emotional now, when the befriendee gives me a hug, wow, this is how powerful it is, to see somebody's life transform, to know that they can actually go out and be themselves, to have the confidence to walk to the shop themselves, to get on the bus, to get on the subway, things that we take for granted. And we wouldn't even think twice about doing it, but for them to achieve that and go off and just, wow.
Yeah, I mean, we go through the induction when we take on new volunteers. We talk about how we will be working towards goals that the person has identified. And it is things about the confidence, the self-esteem, the motivation. But we also talk about it in small steps, things that, as you say, we take for granted when we're well and things in our life are going well. There was one person pre-COVID, and it might not sound much, but she took her jacket off in the cafe for the very first time, okay? Because her anxiety was so high, her confidence and self-esteem were so low that she never took her jacket off anywhere, because she was always in flight or fight mode,
Wow.
She needed to know that if the cafe got busy or she felt unsettled, that she could just bolt in a second. So see the day 8 weeks in where she took her jacket off We celebrated that. And the best thing is, she didn't even realise until she was leaving the cafe that she had taken her jacket off. And that moment of realisation for her was she realised that she's moving forward. You know, we're not saying that the volunteer befriending service is going to cure people. We're not saying that at all. But if it can help you get to the next stage in your life where, say, you're at a crossroads, and you can then make a better decision about where you want to go next. I mean, yeah, another person we just did a wee review on last week has talked about when she's with the volunteer and they go and do a lovely activity, going back to a cafe afterwards, grab a coffee, have a chat, you know, blether, catch up about what they've been doing. The way that the service operates, you know, the volunteer will buy their own refreshments and the befriendee will get their own. See, even that, making her go up to like the counter in Costa and she has to interact with the staff in Costa to ask for her own thing, that's huge for her.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that she already has recognised in 6 weeks of being out with a volunteer, that she wouldn't have done that before. She would have got a family member to place her order, or she just wouldn't have ordered anything. And it's these really small things that can really make a big difference. And yeah, it's lovely to be part of.
Yeah. I mean, you walk past people in the street and you just do not, literally, you do not know that person's story, those people's stories. So how do you go about recruiting befrienders?
I will admit we are very fortunate with our website, because if anybody is specifically looking to volunteer within Glasgow and in mental health, well, once you've typed that into Google, we're going to be the first research result just because that's our name. So we have a good response to our website, but now we have started to advertise through Volunteer Glasgow as well. So every now and again, when we are ready to recruit, we'll pop an advert on Volunteer Glasgow, and we use our website as well. We've also just recently, since our whole service was postponed over COVID, we only came back active and live this year. We've also made up posters and different flyers because we want to try and get a real varied group of volunteers, because at GAMH we support people from all ages, backgrounds, race, religion, countries. So we have a wide pool of people that we can support. So we would like our volunteers to be as diverse and dynamic as we can. So we've decided that we're going to start putting up these wee posters, maybe to target some hard to reach groups. I do admit that male volunteers, especially slightly more mature volunteers, they seem to be quite hard to come by. I do have some fantastic male volunteers, but it tends to be more female, and it tends to be usually younger, maybe like in the early 20s. So our thinking this time around is, let's maybe target posters in gyms, sports places. Where can we find this kind of demographic of men that we're looking for? But I will say, we just put our advert out at the start of the year on Volunteer Glasgow. We got a fantastic response from that. And what I found really interesting is it wasn't that people were necessarily looking for a mental health volunteering placement. They were on Volunteer Glasgow and they liked our advert, because our advert, I think it was saying, do you want to support mental health recovery? Can you spare 2 to 3 hours a week? Do you want to meet new people and have fun? And I think it was, the way that we kind of sold it there. So we got a lot of people inquiring who actually have come on board. We're just kind of finishing up their induction, their background checks and things. So yeah, that was good. So if anybody's interested, keep an eye on our website. I think towards the end of May, we will be recruiting again. So we'll post all the information on the website, how, what's involved, what to expect, how to get an application form, and what happens after that.
I can vouch for myself that the process is quite easy. I think the longest part where you're waiting is waiting for the PVG to come through. But it's a necessary evil if you want to put it like that. But it's to keep you safe, and it's to keep the befriendees safe. And I've actually recently applied for a PVG for vulnerable children as well. And I was thinking that as I've got my one for adults, that the process should be quicker to get the PVG for vulnerable children, but it probably took just as long. But it's come through anyway, and I think it gives you security as well. You know that you're a good person.
Yeah, I mean, so there is a bit of a process, but it's there for a reason. It's there, first and foremost, everything that we do is in the interest of the befriendee. So when we're recruiting volunteers, we have to, same as staff, they have to have background checks. So they have to either be updated or join the PVG scheme. Never mind that that's a requirement of law, it's also ethically and morally the right thing to be doing. We also do reference checks, and obviously there's the induction. So there is a bit of a process. Sometimes I can understand that it might put some people off. Some people might be like, oh, I've got some time, I'd like to start volunteering next week. Unfortunately, because you're working with vulnerable people, that's not something we can do. We can't bypass these safeguarding things. The only benefit I would say is now that because of COVID, the PVG scheme has gone online. So that actually, it might not seem it, but from our end, it's maybe about 10 days. It's made it a little bit faster. I know it doesn't sound like, but it's like, sometimes that's like 2 weeks. So yeah, we'll see how it goes, if it evolves and it gets a little bit more kind of streamlined. But
no, I'm just thinking that, you're saying there 10 days. I'm shocked to get my one for vulnerable children. It took about 7 weeks.
Oh, okay, something, yeah. I'm going to just wonder if there was holidays or absences over that side.
It could well be. It could well be.
Don't get me wrong, not all the PVGs we've done. Some came back, boom, like that. Others I've been chasing up. But yeah, the system's there for a reason. And it also, it reassures all parties. And also, if people are willing, we let them know that once you start your induction, before you can get introduced to somebody, there is going to be a gap. But that lets us know that people are then committed, that they understand why we have to do the induction, the background checks, the references, all this. And so if they're prepared to wait, the 6 weeks, then that tells us something about that person, that, they're in this for the commitment. So, yeah.
Definitely. And I remember back when I did my induction with yourselves, you'd said that all we ask is for you to commit for a minimum of 6 months. So that's, you're with the befriendee 1 day a week for between 2 and 3 hours for 6 months. Do many volunteers come back? I know I've been with you for 4 years now, because I just love it. I absolutely love it.
I know, you're like a bad penny. We can't get rid of you.
Well, no. I can always quit,
No, I will say that obviously when things were postponed over COVID, yourself and one other person were waiting and more than happy to come back. I'd say it's a bit of a mixed bag, really. Sometimes we have people that finish their match with that person for the 6 months, and then they might be rematched with somebody else. It really does vary. Sometimes if people are students and it's coming towards the end of their course, they might not stay to be rematched with us, because they might now no longer be staying in Glasgow. If they finish their studies, they might be moving, or maybe their focus is employment now. So it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest. But yeah, if people want to stay with us, yes, please. Thank you very much. That's wonderful. But people are under no obligation. As I say, sometimes people have done their 6 months and then they've moved on to their next steps. Because sometimes it's about the availability. If you finished your studies and you're now looking for full-time employment, then you might not have that availability. But yeah, we're just really pleased and grateful that people sign up for the 6 months in the first place. And we must hopefully be doing something right, because folk like yourself, wouldn't keep on coming back and be rematched if, there was something awful about the volunteering and the way GAMH operates it. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think I'll be signing up for another 6 months after my current match.
And we have this recorded as evidence. I can throw this back at you later on saying, no, you said, I've got it on tape.
Who says that I'm actually going to give you a link to this?
Oh, you're devious, but that's why we like you.
So, Lynne, anybody listening to this, how can they get in touch with you, either to become a service user or to become a befriender?
Okay, so if people are wanting to access the service, they think that they're struggling and perhaps, getting support for their mental health might be the way forward. Our organisation, GAMH, operates a referral policy. So we can accept referrals from health professionals, so GPs, social work, psychiatry, wellbeing services. So there's lots of routes there. So it has to be a referral. So it's got to come through health. The idea being that perhaps there's other things going on there that maybe the health professional can help with first. So if people want to access, they do it that way. What happens then is one of the teams gets in touch with the person who's been referred in and just has a gentle chat. It's an informal assessment to find out what's going on and then to see what parts of our service might be best suited. Sometimes you find that people have been referred for befriending, but actually, although you can see the benefit to that for them, there's maybe a lot of other complicated circumstances around them that maybe they need some practical support first. So sometimes my colleagues in the staff team might work with somebody first, maybe to address some benefits or some housing issues, maybe improving their confidence to get over the door first before we then introduce the person to a volunteer, because there is a difference between a staff role and a volunteer role. Like, staff will go into the house and they'll support people that way. They'll do different, very practical things. Whereas the expectation for accessing the volunteer befriending support is that the person is able to travel, that their mobility is robust, that they can get out, because the volunteer support takes place within the community or city centre. So if people are needing the support, as I say, speak to a health professional. Actually, housing officers, they're another route in, because a lot of people, the housing officers, will have a good understanding of what's going on in that person's life. So that's one way. If people are thinking, oh, that volunteer malarkey sounds quite good, I fancy a bit of that for myself. As I say, best way is to go onto our website. So just GAMH, GAMH, that's Glasgow Association for Mental Health. You'll see a volunteer tab, and we'll keep that up to date just when we're looking to recruit new volunteers. And as I say, I think we're just updating the message to say mid-May we will be opening up for applications kind of mid-May, which is only about 2 weeks away. So I better get myself organised and ready for all these inquiries that'll come through.
Yeah. And before we finish, I'd just like to say that one thing I love about becoming a befriender with GAMH is that there are lots and lots of courses that you'll put us through. You know, we're not made to do the courses, but they're very beneficial, like safeguarding for adults and children, suicide awareness and things like that. I found them extremely beneficial.
Oh, I'm really pleased to hear that, because I'd also say a big part of my job, okay, so everything that we do is in the best interest of the befriendee, but see an incredibly close second, we want to promote the personal and professional development of the volunteer as well, because you are giving up your time. So what can we do to say thanks for that? Because as I say, sometimes for some people, it's a change of career, it's to get into college or a university course, they're needing some sort of experience. So, when we're working with people, we'll help to find, the right training and courses. But to be honest, the more that we can put the word out in our communities about suicide awareness, that's not just helping you in your volunteering role. That has a wider effect on our communities and our societies. If we know how to have these conversations around suicide or we know what to look out for in terms of poor mental health. So yeah, I kind of see that as a win-win situation.
Oh, definitely. Well, Lynne, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to chat with me, and I'm hoping that this is going to be beneficial to everybody that listens to it, and they'll sign up and become a befriender themselves.
I very much hope so. But listen, Susan, it's always a pleasure catching up with you. I'm sure we'll actually catch up later on at some point this week. I had a wee review with your match on Friday, and yes, all good. Brilliant. And I was just going to run some of that past you, but we'll do that out with the podcast.
Okay, then. Well, you have a fantastic week.
And you, and yeah, I'll catch up with you some point later on. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.